Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into some really fascinating stuff today. Alan Kardec's The Gospel According to Spiritism.
Oh, yeah, one of those foundational texts, for
Yeah.
Spiritism.
Exactly. It explores morality and spirituality.
Right.
But here's the twist. It's all based on communications with spirits.
See, that's what always gets me about Kardec. He takes these ideas we think we know, like from the Bible,
Yeah.
and he just reveals these deeper layers through the spirits.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. We're focusing on chapter 9, Blessed are the meek and peace-loving.
Ah, good one.
What does meekness really mean here? Why is it so powerful?
Right.
How does it connect to patience, obedience,
Yeah.
even anger management, all that good stuff?
Well, this chapter starts with some familiar lines from the Bible.
Okay.
Like Matthew 5.4, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall possess the earth."
Yeah, we've all heard that one.
Right. But Kardec, he takes it in a really interesting direction.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
So most of us think of meek as like timid or passive, but Kardec says it's more like meekness, moderation, patience. They're spiritual law, not just suggestion.
No, it's not just about being a nice person. It's like a fundamental principle.
Okay, so it's not about being a pushover. It's almost like inner strength that leads to peace.
Exactly. And he goes on to argue that possessing the earth,
Mhm.
it's not about material stuff or power like we usually assume.
Right.
He's talking about this future state where
Yeah.
the meek, the people who've developed these virtues, they're no longer exploited by the aggressive. It's like this vision of spiritual progress.
Wow.
Where these qualities actually lead to a more just, harmonious existence.
So it's not just personal. It affects like the whole world.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not about being a pushover. It's almost like building this inner strength that leads to lasting peace.
Uh-huh.
But how do we even know if we're truly meek? We're just pretending.
That's where this spirit Lazar, his insights are really helpful. He talks about true versus false meekness.
Okay.
And he uses this brilliant analogy. He says hypocrites, they're like a garment whose premeditated form covers up hidden deformities.
So it's like a disguise. Looks good on the outside, but hides something else underneath.
Precisely. They may seem meek on the surface, but their true nature is something else entirely.
Okay, got it. Like those people who are all smiles in public, but totally different at home.
Yeah. The text even calls them domestic tyrants.
Wow.
Meek outside, oppressive at home.
Yeah. I think we all know someone like that.
Oh, definitely.
It's a good reminder to look beyond just appearances.
Absolutely. This idea of true versus false meekness, it's super important because it sets the stage for understanding the deeper power of these virtues.
So we've talked about meekness being a spiritual law.
Right.
But then the text goes in a really interesting direction. It connects meekness to charity.
Okay.
There's this quote that really stopped me in my tracks. Pain is a blessing that God sends upon the elect.
Whoa. That's from a spirit friend, by the way.
It's your friend.
Yeah.
Okay. That one definitely makes you think.
It does.
So is this saying that patience is more valuable than giving money?
Well, spirit goes on to explain that, yeah, patience is a harder form of charity than giving alms.
I see what they mean. It's often easier to just give something material than it is to, actually endure hardship with grace and understanding.
It is.
So they're saying real patience, that ability to withstand hardship, is actually an act of love, like a deeper form of charity.
Exactly. It's about transforming pain into an opportunity for growth and understanding. And remember, it's not about being passive. It's about actively choosing to respond with love and understanding
Right.
instead of resentment or bitterness.
Wow, that's a powerful way to look at it. So it's not just about accepting hardship, but actively choosing to respond with grace.
Yes.
It's a challenge for sure. Does the text offer any encouragement?
Oh, definitely. It reminds us that, quote, the blessings are more numerous than the sorrows.
Okay, so even though it's harder, it leads to a better life.
A richer, more fulfilling life, for sure.
Okay, so we've got meekness being a spiritual law, patience as this deep form of charity. What about obedience and resignation? How do those fit in?
Ah, that's where Lazar's perspective is really interesting. He says obedience and resignation, when done right, they aren't passive surrender, they're active virtues.
Hold on, how can obedience be active? Isn't that just following orders?
That's what we usually think, yeah. But Lazar, he makes a distinction. True obedience is, he says, the consent of reason.
Okay.
Meaning we choose to follow a rule or authority because we understand and agree with its purpose.
So it's like, I see why this rule exists. I choose to follow it because it makes sense, not just because someone told me to.
Exactly.
Got it. What about resignation then?
where he says that's the consent of the heart.
Okay.
We're accepting a tough situation not because we're weak, but because we see a higher purpose in it.
So both obedience and resignation actually require strength, like aligning ourselves with something bigger than just our own ego.
Exactly. It's about choosing to trust in a greater plan even when it's tough. Lazar uses this analogy. He compares humanity's progress to being guided by a break-in spur.
Interesting analogy.
Those who resist, they get the spur often through some tough experiences.
Okay.
But the meek, those willing to listen and learn, they progress more smoothly.
So it's like recognizing that sometimes the universe is trying to steer us in a certain direction,
Yes,
even if it doesn't feel comfortable in the moment.
precisely. It makes you think about your own life, right? Where are you resisting?
Good point.
Where might surrendering actually lead to more growth, more understanding?
Definitely something to think about. Okay, so we've covered meekness, patience, obedience, resignation, all these surprisingly powerful virtues.
Right.
But what about the flip side? What about anger? How does that fit in?
Well, the text tackles that head on too. It starts with this statement. Pride leads you to deem yourselves to be more than you really are. That's from a protector spirit, unnamed this time.
Okay, so pride, like when we have this inflated sense of ourselves, we're more likely to get offended or threatened.
Exactly. And the spirit goes on to say, most anger, it comes from wounded pride. We get angry when we're contradicted, feel disrespected, things don't go our way. It all ties back to our sense of I being challenged, diminished somehow.
So the key to managing anger is working on humility, letting go of that need to always be right or have things go our way.
That's a big part of it, yeah. The text gives this really vivid image to show how irrational anger can be. It describes people attacking inanimate objects because they don't obey,
Like what?
like yelling at a printer for jamming or something.
Huh. I've been there.
Yeah.
But what about people who say they can't help their anger? They blame it on their temperament, like it's just who they are.
Right, that's where we get this awesome rebuttal from the spirit Hanuman.
Okay.
He basically says, nope, that's an excuse.
So it's not our biology, our genes.
According to Spiritism, our virtues and vices, they're part of our spirits, not our physical bodies. This implies we have more control over our character than we might think.
That is interesting. So even if we're prone to anger, we can overcome it. We don't have to be controlled by it.
Exactly. And Hanuman, he ends with this really powerful statement. Those who want to correct themselves always can. So there's hope for all of us.
That is a great place to stop and reflect. We've covered so much ground already. Meekness as a spiritual law, patience as charity, obedience and resignation as choices, not weaknesses, anger stemming from pride.
It's a lot, yeah.
In the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore what all this means for us practically. How do we cultivate these virtues in our own lives?
Right.
What kind of world could we create if we truly embrace the power of meekness?
Some big questions.
Stay tuned. Welcome back. It's amazing to think about all these different ways meekness shows up,
It is, yeah.
Enduring hardship with grace, choosing obedience because we understand, not just blindly following.
What I find fascinating is how Kardec ties this all back to spiritual growth.
Right. It's not about being perfect or anything,
Right.
but understanding what's driving our emotions and then making choices that lead to more harmony
Yeah.
within ourselves and with the world.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like instead of just reacting automatically, we become more aware of our thoughts, our actions,
Yeah,
and how they affect everything.
totally. And that's where Kardec's take on possessing the earth gets really interesting.
Mhm.
Remember, it's not about material wealth or power.
It's not. No.
It's about a future where people who've cultivated these virtues,
meek, the patient, the understanding.
exactly, they create a society that's not dominated by aggression and exploitation anymore. It's like this vision of a more peaceful, just world where those qualities are valued most.
That is a beautiful vision.
It is. So it's not just personal growth. It's about contributing to a better world for everyone.
Uh-huh.
But it can feel overwhelming,
Yeah.
like how do we transform our entire character? Where do we even begin?
I think it starts with awareness. Just recognizing the power of meekness, how important patience is, and how destructive anger can be, that's huge.
Okay, so awareness first.
Yeah, and then once we see those things at play, we can start making different choices, moment by moment.
It's like hitting the pause button before we react.
Yes, exactly.
Like next time I feel that anger coming up,
Yeah.
I can ask myself, wait, what's going on here? Is my pride hurt? Am I feeling threatened or insecure?
That's it. You get curious about the root cause, and you can respond more skillfully.
Yeah.
Maybe you realize you need to take a few deep breaths, step away from the situation, choose your words more carefully.
Instead of just exploding.
Exactly.
So that shift in perspective, that can make a huge difference. Instead of just reacting, we're acting from understanding.
Right. And remember what Hahnemann said?
About correcting ourselves.
Yes. It's about taking responsibility for our inner world,
Okay.
recognizing that we have more power to change than we think.
So we're not stuck with whatever temperament we were born with. We can choose to be more patient, more understanding, more meek.
You got it. It takes effort, but the rewards are incredible.
They are. Not only do we feel more peaceful,
Right.
but we create a more harmonious environment for everyone around us too.
It's like this ripple effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As we become more patient, others around us might feel calmer.
Uh-huh.
And as we choose understanding over anger, it can inspire others to do the same.
It's not just self-improvement. It's about co-creating a better world together.
What I'm really struck by is how this connects to interconnectedness.
Oh, yeah.
Kardec saying we're all part of this larger web.
We are.
And our choices affect not only us, but the entire fabric of existence.
It really makes you think twice about how you treat others,
Yeah.
knowing that your actions contribute to either harmony or disharmony in the world.
Yeah.
And it's not about being perfect all the time, because we all mess up sometimes.
Oh, for sure. But the key is to keep practicing, keep learning, keep striving to embody these virtues, even if we stumble.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
It's about making those conscious choices moment by moment that align with those principles.
Before we move on, I'm curious, what really stands out to you from what we've discussed so far?
I think for me, it's the emphasis on personal responsibility. It's so empowering to realize we have the power to choose our responses no matter our circumstances or what we think our temperament is.
I love that. Takes the pressure off needing to be perfect and focuses on those conscious choices.
Exactly.
Even if they're small. What about for you? Anything resonating in particular?
Besides that, the idea that our actions have this ripple effect, that we're all interconnected and contributing to this collective energy, it's profound. It's like every choice is a vote for the kind of world we want.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Okay.
So we've talked about the power of meekness, the importance of patience, anger's destructiveness, how this relates to our growth, both personally and collectively. But there's one more piece of this chapter I find really fascinating. The idea that obedience and resignation can actually be strengths.
Ah, yes. That's one of the most counterintuitive parts, isn't it?
It is. We tend to think of obedience and resignation as weak or submissive. But Lazar totally flips that.
He does.
He says true obedience isn't about blindly following orders.
Right.
It's about understanding why a rule exists and choosing to follow it because it makes sense.
Consent of reason, as he calls it.
Exactly. And resignation, it's not giving up, it's accepting a tough situation because we see a higher purpose in it.
That takes a lot of trust and surrender to embrace.
It does. It's about letting go of the ego's need to control
Yeah.
and aligning ourselves with something wiser. Sometimes surrendering is the wisest choice.
It is. It is. It's like recognizing that the universe might have a plan we can't grasp right now.
Yeah.
And instead of resisting, we choose to trust in that plan, even when it feels uncomfortable and challenging.
It makes you wonder, where in our lives are we being asked to surrender? What are we holding on to that's causing us suffering?
That's the question, isn't it?
Could be a relationship, a job, a belief, anything we're clinging to that's not serving us anymore.
And the text reminds us, often in those moments of surrender, we find a deeper strength. We tap into this power that's bigger than our own ego.
Yeah, it can be scary, but also really liberating.
It is.
It's like that saying, let go and let God. Sometimes letting go is the bravest, most powerful thing we can do.
Absolutely. And often when we surrender, we open ourselves up to possibilities we couldn't even imagine when we were trying to control everything.
It's true. I'm really feeling how this goes way beyond just meekness.
Me too.
It's like Kardec's presenting a whole different way of looking at the world, at ourselves, at how we relate to everything.
It's a whole philosophy, a framework for understanding our place in the universe, our relationships, our own inner landscapes.
And it offers this path to more peace, more fulfillment, more spiritual growth. It's not passive, though.
Definitely not.
It requires effort, conscious choices, a willingness to question our assumptions.
It's about becoming more aware, more intentional, more aligned with the best version of ourselves.
This is a lot to take in. I think we both need a moment to let it sink in. In the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore some of the implications of all this. What does it mean for our lives moving forward? How do we cultivate these virtues in a world that often seems to value aggression and competition?
That's the big question, isn't it? And how can we use what we're learning to help create a more peaceful and just society?
Big questions indeed. Stick with us. We'll explore them next.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Allan Kardec's The Gospel According to Spiritism. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has. All these ideas about meekness, patience, obedience, resignation.
And how they challenge everything we think we know about strength and power.
Right. Like we're so used to thinking meekness is weakness, aggression is strength.
Yeah.
But Kardec flips it all around.
It's a real paradigm shift.
She says true power comes from mastering ourselves.
Not from dominating others. Which is a powerful message.
It is.
Yeah.
Especially in a world that's all about competition, individual achievement.
Yeah.
But how do we actually live these teachings?
Yeah.
How do we cultivate these virtues day to day?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is.
I think it starts with self-awareness, paying attention to our thoughts, our emotions, our reactions. Like we were saying earlier, when you feel that anger rising up,
Yeah.
instead of lashing out, you pause, you ask yourself, what's really happening here? Wounded pride, fear, insecurity.
So it's like becoming an observer of our own minds, right?
Yes.
And noticing the patterns that lead to those negative emotions, behaviors.
Exactly. And once you start to see those patterns, you can choose a different response.
Okay.
Instead of reacting without thinking, you practice patience, understanding, compassion.
So like if someone cuts me off in traffic, instead of honking the horn, letting that anger take over,
Yeah.
I might take a deep breath and think, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they just didn't see me.
Exactly. It's about creating that space between the thing that happens and how you react. So you can choose consciously, not just react out of habit.
But that takes practice, right? It's not like we become perfectly meek and patient overnight.
Of course not. It's an ongoing process, a journey.
Yeah.
There will be times we mess up, lose our temper, fall back into old habits. That's natural.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about progress.
Exactly. It's about constantly striving to align our thoughts, our words, our actions with these virtues.
And remember what Hahnemann said. Those who want to correct themselves always can.
Such a good reminder. There's hope for all of us.
It is encouraging to hear that. And it reminds me that even small acts of kindness, patience, forgiveness, they all make a difference.
They do. We don't have to wait till we're perfect to start making a positive impact.
Every choice ripples outward.
Exactly. It all comes back to interconnectedness.
Yeah. We're all part of this web of life.
We are.
Our actions have consequences far beyond just ourselves.
And it's empowering, to realize we can choose to be a force for good.
Yeah.
Just by making those conscious choices that align with these virtues.
This brings us back to Kardec's vision of the meek inheriting the earth.
Right.
It's not some far-off future. It's about the choices we make right now.
Exactly. So what does that future look like to you? What kind of world do we create if we embrace these teachings?
For me, it's a world where people value cooperation over competition,
Okay.
understanding over judgment, peace over conflict, where everyone feels safe, respected, supported to be themselves.
That's a beautiful vision, a world where kindness, compassion, forgiveness, those are the norm, not the exception.
Exactly. Where people listen to each other, really listen, trying to understand, not condemn.
And it starts with each one of us.
It does. We can choose to live these virtues.
Yeah.
Inspire others by our actions. Create positive change that spreads far and wide.
It's about recognizing we're not just individuals out for ourselves.
Right.
We're interconnected, sharing this journey together.
And that's what Kardec's really saying, isn't it? Recognizing our interconnectedness, embracing the power of these virtues, working together to create a better world for everyone.
It's a journey worth taking.
It is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the surprising power of meekness. Keep exploring these ideas, see what resonates, and think about how you can bring these virtues into your life. Remember, the power to create a better world starts with each of us.